Welcome back to the Lockheed Athlete Podcast. Podcast. Look at that, dude. Look at that. The episode
ADHD meds didn't hit this morning, huh?
episode 5. We're getting after it, guys. We're going to be a little bit more intentional as we move forward with just serving on specific topics, and a topic that Mitch and I talked about that I think is something that really bleeds into every single aspect of quarterback is being a captain or being a leader. And, this guy was a captain over at Wake Forest, and I was a captain at Wyoming and Vanderbilt, and both of us captains in high school. And it's like, really what we want to talk about today is just what the role of a captain is, what that looks like. Obviously, leadership is going to be deeply intertwined in all of that. But talking about, when you elect to play the quarterback position, that comes with it a whole lot of responsibility, and that's responsibility in a lot of different areas. So, Mitch, when we talk about the correlation between being a quarterback and being a leader and being a captain, as you look at those three terms and you kind of throw them all together, what to you is being a captain? What is being a quarterback, and how are those intertwined?
Yeah, I really don't think when you say the word quarterback and leader and captain, there's no difference between those three words. Like it's all the same to me, and I think even from the outside perspective, if somebody asks you what position you play and you say you play quarterback, their eyes light up immediately. And you typically get a response like, "Oh, you play quarterback." And automatically they assume that you're the leader of your program, the leader of your team, the leader of the locker room. And what a quarterback, leader, captain, it's all the same. What it looks like to me is you have to, it's a 24/7 thing. You have to be on 24/7, 365. It's not a step into the building and turn it on. It's an all the time thing. It's a full-time job. And I think it's the most important job as a quarterback. If we had to give it, if we made captain a job, one of your jobs as a quarterback, it is the most important job. And what that looks like to me is being the toughest cat on the field, physically and mentally. A guy that's able to stay even keel, the same person every single day, the hardest worker in the facility, and someone that's ready to, shoulder all the blame and deflect all the success. That's kind of what a captain looks like to me. And I know that you were a captain at two schools, and I don't know how you guys did it. Was it coaches voted or players voted? How did it go down?
We were players vote. How did you guys do it at Wake?
We were everybody in the program votes.
Yeah.
So everybody in the program got a vote, whether you're the janitor or the head coach. But I think speak on that a little bit. How cool is it that your peers, the guys that you work with, and for you at Wyoming, you were a sophomore when you got voted.
True
so you were still 19, 20, and there were 22, 23-year-olds that voted for you. So just speak on that and how cool that is, but also kind of the pressure and the hardships that come with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing is what you said, where it's like, it's all the same, right? So it's like, if I'm trying to lead a football team, like if I'm trying to lead an organization, like ultimately that's going to be reflected in the way that I walk into the building and what clothes I'm wearing and, the way that I approach everything that I do. So I think the biggest thing is like, you can't run from it. Obviously you can't run from it. And when you choose this position, that should be what you've chosen as well, at least in your head. So, for me back then, like to be voted that way at, 19 years old as a true sophomore, I think honestly, it was just they saw the insane commitment that I had to becoming the best version of myself. And I think that sometimes, especially early on in your career, as high school guys, like when you're younger in your high school career, it's like, let them just see it. Let them see it. You don't need to say much. Like something that I believe about leadership is like, you'll know when it's time to speak. Like until then, just shut up and work hard. Like, and do everything to the best of your ability. And I think that's what they saw an insane, like tireless competitor and somebody who was pushing themselves in every single area. And then, the most important part to me is the heart piece behind it. But, we'll get into that as we keep going. But I think as you look at just, being able to be voted in that position, it was my complete commitment at all times, like Mitch said, to a 365, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week job. And that is to essentially set the standard. And so when we talk about setting the standard, Mitch, like there's the standard within the program, and then there's the standard that you're going to set within the program? Like, why don't you give them some testimony of like Wake's standard and then what you kind of applied as your own standard to be able to put yourself in that type of position, the things that went beyond just what the program was asking you to do?
Yeah, I was super blessed to be a part of the program that Wake was and the culture that it was. When I first got to Wake, we had mandatory Saturday workouts, and they weren't mandatory from the coaches. Like, it wasn't like the fake mandatory ones where you optional but not optional. Like, it was truly optional, and there were 80 kids in the indoor every single Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, it was deep. Like, kids in the weight room, kids were out in the field doing whatever. We were throwing with the wideouts, the tight ends, and the running backs. And that was a great standard of the program. And it was my job as I got older was to uphold that standard and make sure that those guys showed up, and make sure that everybody was doing their job and doing their part on a Saturday. But it was also the standard I wanted to uphold was go even further than that. Let's get in on a Wednesday. Let's meet for 30 minutes on a Tuesday, Thursday. And I don't want to kill the guys, and sometimes it was hard for me to understand that, maybe these guys they loved it, but they weren't obsessed like I was. Like, this was everything for me. My mind was, okay, I got this. How does it relate to football? Okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, well, how can I fit this in today football-wise? My whole day revolved around football. And I understand that it took me a while to understand that not everybody was wired that way, but I still wanted to push the guys, and I wanted them to hold them accountable. So that was kind of my standard. How can we do even more than just the Saturday? How can we do, a few days during the week? And honestly, I was so blessed to be around so many players that wanted to do that anyways, so it wasn't very difficult.
Yeah.
But it was also cool to see some guys who kind of started on the fence about it and turned into being guys that were like, hey, are we watching tape today? And even held me accountable times because I was like, yeah, let's go watch some tape, Because there are definitely some Thursday or Friday afternoons where I was kind of ready to coast into the weekend, but those guys held me accountable too, which was an awesome thing to be a part of. And when you talk about being a quarterback and being a captain and leader and the big trio that we put all in one, what do you think the most important characteristics, like personality wise? Obviously, you got to be a hard worker and all that and obsessed with the game and whatnot. But what are some personality traits that you have seen, maybe even yourself, but also other leaders you've been around at the quarterback position, that you've seen over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one for me is always that you actually genuinely care about
100%.
everybody. Like, I think that, as I look back at my career, it's one of those things that in the heat of the battle, like, you just do things intuitively sometimes, and they're not premeditated, and you don't like plan things out in terms of, illustrating your leadership ability. But it's like, over the years, I've been able to reflect and watch other guys lead and then kind of tap into like what is really special about the way that I led. And like, I think that what was really special about the way that I led was I always wanted to make the people who maybe shouldn't feel that they're a big part of our team like they are a big part of our team. So, whether that's a walk-on offensive lineman that's 40 pounds overweight that can barely finish conditioning, that's jogging around the field, and like I set the standard of, as we've all finished, like running to him and like jogging with him, or clapping it up for him, or things like that. Things like it doesn't even need to be players. It's going to your trainers, going to your equipment managers, and those guys can be tough as shit. But like going to those groups of people and just asking them how they're doing, asking them what's going on in their days, just being genuine. Just being genuine.
Yeah.
Because like Mitch said, there's a lot of like the work ethic piece, all of those things. I mean, those are kind of monkey see, monkey do. Like, what you're supposed to do as it pertains to those things. But some of the underbelly of leadership to me is like, who are you when nobody's watching? And I think that that's something that, like, dude, especially if you're in college, like, you can go out and have a good time and do your thing, but it's like, you're never off the clock. Like, your leadership is never off the clock. So let's say you are of age and you're at a bar in college and going out, and I've been there too, guys, but it's like, you're not off the clock. Like, the way you handle yourself in that environment is ultimately going to change the way that people perceive you, positively or negatively. And like, you can't ever run from that. So, Mitch, when you think about it, and I know how big your heart is and how much you serve, but it's like, I'm going to put you in harder territory that like you've probably not been in quite as much. But like, when you look at that role of how you can be perceived in environments that are not football related, and then that affect the way they see you in football, whether it be you or guys that you were around or anything. Like, why don't you speak to the responsibility of what it is to be a leader, even when you're not wearing cleats or in the weight room with the guys?
Yeah, it's such a fine line because you want to be a normal guy. You want the guys to see you as one of the guys. You don't want to be seen as a robot or a coach. You want the guys to want to play for you, and you want the guys to be able to relate to you. But you also don't want to be seen as a guy and now there have been many quarterbacks that are very successful that have been known to tear it up on the weekends. And I'm not, bro, it works for a lot of guys. And I'm not saying it's a horrible thing. You want to be one of the guys. But like I walked a fine line in college. Like I wanted my O lineman to want to play for me.
Yeah.
So yes, there were a few weekends, where I would go tear it up with them, and we were drinking, we were getting food, and I wanted them to know that I was one of them. I didn't want them just to see me as a guy that didn't want to go out with them and hang out with them. They were also some of my best friends. So it wasn't like it was a chore. But then again, when I'm going out and there's a younger kid in the program that sees me drinking, which is fine, am I drinking responsibly? Am I making a fool of myself? Am I embarrassing the program when I'm out? And I never did that, and that was obviously never a goal of mine. But you have to walk a fine line. You want the guys to want to play for you. You're in college. You want to make memories. You want to have fun. You want to go out. But you got to do it responsibly. And it wasn't an every weekend thing. It was probably, once every 2 months thing. And I was going out, but I wasn't drinking. And that's just because, again, it's always on. 24/7, it's on. And when you're at a Power 5 school like Vandy or Wake, people know who you are. When you're surrounded by 8 dudes who are 6'4", 300 pounds, they know it's the football team, right?
For sure. And I'll jump in here real quick too with like the guys in high school. Like I talked to all you guys in high school. It's like, dude, they feel like we did at Wake and Vandy these days. Like you got cell phones out everywhere, dude. You got stuff going on, and you're not even of drinking age to be able to be doing things like that.
Yeah.
And that shit's going down in high school. So it's like, as you look at that, it's like, something that I'll say is we all need our releases or our breaks, right? And it's like, for me, I'm heavily dependent on nature. Like these guys all know, and I'm a music festival guy, and I'm proud of that because I go, dude, anyone that says that music festivals are just these shit places and all of that, hasn't been to one. Because when you go to one, you realize there's a lot of people that really just want to dance and enjoy themselves for a couple days because life and work is hard. Mm-hmm. So if I get out there and shake my ass a little bit, that's a way for me to kind of release just some of that pent up shit, for me. And life is tough. And so as a leader, especially the weight that's carried on our shoulders, that can get heavy. But there's a time and place. There's people to do it with and not to do it with. There's places to do it and places not to do it. And, ultimately, I think that being responsible with that is just something that you'll never be able to run away from. So it's not coach speak, dude. I've been the guy on the other side of that. Trust me. I've been brought in by a coach. Yo, I heard you were out here this weekend. And it's like, damn, I didn't even do anything. How the hell did you know that I was out there? And it's like, it's going to find its way up the chain, dude. It's going to find its way up the chain. So I think being smart about it is something, and, to kind of pivot full 360 here, but it's I think a really hard thing too when you talk about leadership is you talk about this role of being the friend versus being the quote unquote coach on the field. And it's that is such a difficult line. And my answer as a freshman and the way that I handled it as a starting quarterback versus the way that I handled it as a redshirt senior was completely different. So Mitch, to you, I think that's something that these guys do struggle with is what to you is that line between being a guy's guy and being a friend with all the guys and leading them the way that they need to be led? And how'd you go about that?
Great. That's such a great question. And I think it always ties back to just being authentic and honest and true to yourself and just caring. You spoke on it, and I couldn't have said it any better. Just having a genuine care for your guys does so much for your ability to lead them. if all you do is go up to them and get on them, correct them, and hold them accountable, they're going to see you as a coach.
Yeah.
But if you have a real relationship and they know that you love them, and then you go and get on them, they know that's not the only time you guys are communicating is when you get on them. You've talked 10 times already that day. You've asked how his mom and dad are. You've bullshitted with him in the locker room. You've laughed. You've argued. You've done all that. You've debated bullshit that's just dumb. So when you have that relationship, so when you go on the field, I think of a guy like one of my best friends at school, Keyshawn Williams, right? Like I had such a great relationship with him. Off the field, one of my best friends. And then on the field, if we ever had an argument, bro, we could yell at each other.
Right.
And then 2 minutes later, it was like, we were good, but it's because we loved each other.
Right.
And if you don't have that, then it just becomes grudges and it's awkward. And again, it just like you hit on it so well, man. Just having such an
incredible answer there, though, too, is like the depth of your relationships is ultimately going to allow you to say what needs to be said while you're out there. So, Mitch, when it did come time to actually say the thing that needed to be said that was going to make some people uncomfortable, how did you find the courage, like, to be able to do that? Or, because that's a process. So, like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, first of all, you have to know your audience, right? There's a few guys I knew that I could get on, and they could get on me. And then I knew there were a few guys that did better with one-on-one conversations and private conversations. And, I think there's a great video from Kirby Smart that we had to watch at a captain's meeting, and it was kind of talking about what it's like to be a leader. And one of the points that he said was that as a leader, you're not always going to be able to justify what you did. There's going to be a lot of times where you have to make a decision, and you can't explain why you made it or what led into it. But you have to do it because in your heart of hearts, it's better for the team.
I feel that.
And there were plenty of times like that, and it was really hard. And I'm sure there were times where teammates left the locker room or a practice where I said something, and they're like, the fuck is that kid's problem?
Right.
I was doing it the best I could, and as a captain, you want to be loved, but it's more important to be respected. And again, if you have a relationship with those guys and you love them and they know you care, all that bullshit will be washed away in time.
Totally.
It'll go away in time, and you'll be bullshitting in the locker room again soon. But it's hard. There are important conversations to be had because at the end of the day, everybody wants to win.
Yeah.
And if you didn't want to win and it was just for shits and giggles, then you could avoid all those conversations. But it's not. And I think it's important. I've said it 1,000 times. Just relationships allow you to be free in those conversations, and so people's feelings aren't going to get hurt, and that if your dad or mom yells at you, right? You don't sit there thinking, well, fuck them. You might, but you're not sitting there like, fuck them. That's all they do is yell at me. It's coming from a place of love, and I think it's a similar thing. Obviously, more of a friend relationship, but when they know it's when the only time you talk to them is getting on them, it's never going to work.
Never. No. And I think Mitch said it perfectly. I mean, we can mic drop off that, but then as I think about you high school guys and younger college guys that are trying to get into it, like something that I did struggle with, and again, the relationship aspect is line one. But line two for me was that line of respect versus love was one that early in my career, I erred on the side of love. So it was like,
have to.
Everything was about like not stepping on toes in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And then I felt that I had earned that right and had earned those relationships to now be able to speak a little bit more. And like I said at the beginning of this, like to me, it's when you know, you're going to know. So if you're wondering if it's time, it's probably not time.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
But for me with that was also, let's just make the straight correlation here. I got a Z receiver on a 10-yard stop. He stops the route at 8. Well, because he stopped the route at 8, he never flipped the corner truly in his back pedal. So his hips never flipped, and he didn't start running backwards. Instead, he played the in-between, or he just stayed in the back pedal. Well, I throw the 8-yard stop in practice as a true freshman. I don't say anything. That stop's supposed to be at 10 yards. You go out in the game, I'm not using this, unfortunately, I can't say that this was a personal experience on this example, but is like, guy runs a stop, pick 6 because he ran it at 8. The guy didn't cross his hips, never flipped his hips. So the corner is able to keep it all in front, come downhill, pick it off, and run it back for a touchdown. As you get older in your career, you start to realize those are the things that win and lose games.
Yeah, no doubt.
So when Al Pacino's freaking saying it's a game of inches and any given Sunday, it's like, dude, those are the inches. Yeah. And as a quarterback, like it's our job to make sure that those inches are working in our favor as much as possible.
Yeah.
So something that I thought that I did do really well by the end of my career was like, not only am I holding this guy accountable because he needs to be held accountable so that we do it right, I'm also explaining to him why.
Yeah.
As opposed to just saying, damn it, John, like, why'd you stop that thing at 8? It needs to be at 10. What the fuck are you doing? It's like, instead I was like, bro, like, if you run that thing at 8, corner never flips his hips. Corner never flips his hips. He stays in a back pedal and keeps his eyes in front the whole time. He does that. He can break on the ball a whole half a second earlier. That's either a pick, a batted down ball, or you get tackled right away.
Yeah.
You make him flip his hips. He turns and flies out the gate. You hit the brakes at 10, you catch that thing, you got 3 yards to work with now, bro.
Yeah.
Being able to explain those things to him too. So do you have any like personal experience or any thoughts, Mitch, just in general about like being willing to actually say it as opposed to, you know, kind of biting your tongue?
Yeah. And you hit on it so well. It was even as going into, you know, my first year as a starter, you know, I was named a captain, but I hadn't played much yet. I had one start under my belt. So I still, in a way, didn't feel like I earned it.
Yeah.
But what I did earn was the love from my teammates, and I had genuine relationships with them. When I first got to school, I knew I wanted to be a captain. My first task in that was love my teammates and have a relationship with them. So when my time came, that was already there. But there were plenty of times where as I got more comfortable and really felt like I earned it, those conversations happened every day at practice. But it was so great that I also had guys who were so eager to want to be coached. And it was so much fun being able to go coach guys like, hey, man, I need you, like you just said, at 10 yards, instead of 8, here's why. And then they do it. And then how cool of a moment is it when it shows up in a game and they look at you? I had guys look at me like, bro, that's what we talked about. And then it's just like this moment between you and another guy. It's like, fuck yeah, dude, we just did that together. And it led to success, you know?
Right.
And it's so cool. It's such a great moment. Again, not only does it lead to success, but it makes you even closer, you know, when you're able to have those conversations. So, it happened plenty of times, and it was some cool stuff. I'm glad I got to be a part of people who were so willing to learn and just take it as well. It was awesome.
No doubt, dude. And for you, like, with your experience with younger guys and your dad coaches a bunch of high school athletes and stuff, and like as you think about these guys that are at a younger age, like what do you see guys make mistakes with as it pertains to leadership or like trying to be the captain or whatever it is, you know, like what mistakes do you see them make?
I think like you don't always have to be a rah-rah guy. I was very vocal, but never in like a, man, let's fucking go today. Like it was never that. It was vocal in the way that I talked to everybody at practice. During water breaks, it was just bullshit. During periods, it was like, hey, did you see that rep? And talk about it, you know? That's what I think some people, you know, mistake being vocal, what it really means. Not being a rah-rah guy versus actually critical and informative, I guess is the word, informative wording, you know? Like not just fluff and bullshit and screaming, and
right.
But actually like important words. And that's what I think being vocal really is getting your point across in a way that's effective. That's the word I'm looking for, effective communication, opposed to just screaming and yelling. And there's a time for screaming and yelling, obviously. It's an emotional game. But I think I see so many young kids just, you know, getting up there and yelling and and being a little inauthentic, where I think being a vocal leader is just being in constant communication about how is your day? How's your family? And hey, on this rep, can we do this, that, and the other? So that's what I see. What do you see? You work with way more younger guys than I do, so you've seen this 10 times, 100 times about I have. What do you think?
I mean, I think you hit it pretty well. But to me, it would be the inauthentic piece that Mitch just talked about is stop putting effort into being a captain and put more effort into being the best version of yourself. Like
100%.
focus on you. Like,
yeah.
I'll tell the story of Michael Clay. Michael Clay is the youngest special teams coordinator in the history of the NFL. He was the special teams coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles at 30 years old and was a captain with me in high school. And he was a 3-year captain for Chip Kelly at Oregon, was a starting middle linebacker for 4 years at Oregon. The guy never said a word.
Yeah.
Now, on the field, when he's setting the front and making calls, that's a voice now. That's a voice.
Yeah.
But he never said a word.
Mm-hmm.
But to do all the things he's done, there wasn't a day that you were going to not see him at a workout. There wasn't a day you weren't going to see him there early. There wasn't a day you weren't going to see him being intentional about every single thing that he was doing throughout the day, and he never said a word.
Yeah.
So I'm more of a I don't even like the rah-rah thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't even want that on my shoulders, but definitely had a lot more fire and was more vocal. Yeah. But at the foundation of it, I said I'm a true freshman, and I get named a captain as 19-year-old going into my true sophomore year, and it's the number of times I said anything besides to my huddle on the field was never.
And it's not because you were scared, bro. There's 23-year-old grown men.
Grown-ass men.
Grown-ass men. They're like, bro, who's this kid?
Right.
It's hard. It's hard. It's a hard place to be in, for sure.
Totally. And I think nowadays, especially in youth sports and stuff too, is you guys fight the battle too of dude, people are at 15 supposed to be something. And it's so then you walk in with this idea that you have to carry it, and all that shit just takes you away from yourself. Mm-hmm. So I think coming full circle to this thing and kind of finishing up this episode, I think is really about embracing who you are, being the best version of who you are, leading with your heart, and building relationships that ultimately allow you to lead.
Yeah.
And then as you lead, doing it in the best interest of the culture and the football program, not yourself.
Yep.
And if you can carry those things into your daily work with you, I think that puts you at the top of today's mountain in terms of leadership. Mitch, is there anything that I missed there that you think?
No, I couldn't have said better myself.
That'll happen all the time on here. This guy could just go on 45-minute monologues every episode, but that's not what this is about. This is about a blending of the young and old. This is about, even though I kicked his ass when I was in college while at Wake Forest, is that we're bringing together 2 premier academic institutions from different conferences. And so we're all about inclusivity. But anyway, guys, that's episode 5. If you have any questions about leadership, anything on that front, drop them in the comments, reach out to us via DM. Obviously excited to continue to talk to you guys about this and throwing topics our way too. Mitch and I got topics for days, and we're going to go on and on about all these things. But as we get more comfortable doing this, and as you guys become more of a part of this, you can get even more raw and kind of tailor it the way that you guys need it to be tailored for you. So anyway, episode 5 in the books, and we'll see you soon here shortly.